We're here for a career navigation talk here on the mobile stage together, but you do not need to be a mobile dev to benefit from the tips and tricks that we're going to hear today from the two authors of this book, Hack Your Job Search. This was a book that the two authors developed for devs on their job search and their career navigation journey earlier in their careers, maybe post-graduation, or maybe if you're restarting your career navigation search as a dev. So we're going to hear some of the key highlights from the book from the two authors today, which I have the pleasure of introducing. So the first speaker and author of the book that we'll meet today is Tim Condon. So Tim is a Swift developer from Manchester, UK, and one half of the Vapor core team. He's part of the server-side Swift team at Codeco and has written the unofficial book on Vapor with creators of the framework. He founded Broken Hands a few years ago and delivers talks and workshops on Vapor and server-side Swift from around the world. He also co-organizes the Server-Side Swift Conference, the world's first and only conference focused on server-side Swift. And he's also joined today with the other co-author of the book, who is Jennifer Bailey. Jennifer Bailey is a former software engineer who is now a full-time professor at Ames Community College in Colorado, where she teaches mobile app development for Android and iOS. She also teaches courses in Python, Java, C++, and .NET platforms utilizing C#. She is the lead organizer of the Google Developer Group of Northern Colorado, and she enjoys various Android meetups and conferences around the world and the United States. In her spare time, Jen enjoys rollerblading, horseback riding, and spending time with her teenage daughter, dogs, and cats. And I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce them to give you some really, really good tips on your job search today.
Hi, folks. Hello. I think we're good to go. Let's get started. Okay, so welcome to today's talk / mini workshop. We're going to cover some of the key tips and tricks from the book, and we're expecting plenty of questions. So this is going to be a very question-heavy talk. So some quick introductions. First off, Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Bailey. I'm a full-time professor, tech editor, author with Codeco.com. If you want to follow me, I use LinkedIn and Twitter, so there's my handle. It's my pleasure to be here today answering some of the most frequently asked questions that I get. So really excited to be here and nice to meet you all.
Cool. And then, hi everyone, I'm Tim. Amanda's introduced most of the important stuff about me. But I run a company called Broken Hands doing training consultancy with clients, but I have a number of employees around the world, and kind of my experience from the book was taken from hiring people from all different levels. So that's kind of some of the knowledge I've applied when we wrote the book. So as I mentioned right at the start, this is an interactive workshop. We're going to spend maybe 10 minutes kind of going over some of the key points from the book. And give you some nice actionable advice, but we want questions. So please start submitting questions now. We're expecting lots and lots of questions, and we will try our best to get through all of them. So if you have any questions about anything around your job search, around whether it's your resume or finding jobs or companies or how best to apply, please submit them and we can go through them one by one. The kind of two main topics we want to look at is kind of looking at the market and how to kind of put yourself in the best position for finding a job. So when looking at the market, there are a number of different areas you can look at to find roles and to work out which roles are best for you. So most of you, almost all of you, will already have an existing network. That might be friends and colleagues from previous jobs or current jobs, or it might be your university, college students, friends. It might be people on your boot camp. So make the most of that network and leverage it to find jobs. A lot of jobs are word of mouth and aren't that advertised very well. So if you have recruiters who are friends, if you have conferences that you go to, if you go to meetups that you can meet people, and most people there will be hiring or looking for people. So definitely make the most of that kind of network and grow that network and LinkedIn and Twitter and all those kind of things to find jobs to apply to. When you're looking for jobs, it's very important to read the job description, obviously. Job titles tend to be quite fluffy, I want to say, and the job description is where it really gets into the roles that you'll be the role that you'll be doing and the kind of job that you'll be doing. So it might say that they're looking for a senior developer, but if you read the job description, it will say a ranger from junior to senior. So don't let things like the job title of being a senior developer put you off from applying if you feel like you don't have that experience, because it may be that you can go in as a junior developer or a normal developer. And the job descriptions are a very good way of finding out kind of the culture of the company. So we all have our preferences of what we like and what we don't like when working for companies. I know that personally I don't like working for big companies because I don't like red tape and I don't like being held back. Other people prefer the kind of structure and the stability that you get from working for big companies, or they prefer the reach that they get, because if you work for big companies, you're more likely to be able to affect multiple people. Whereas if you work for small startups, your kind of number of users might be a lot smaller. So it's a really good idea to write down a list of things that you're looking for, both in a company and a job. So you might have your preferred companies that you know you want to work for, that you've always wanted to work for, and that's great. Write those down and write down the qualities that you want from those companies. So it might be that you're looking for something that's remote only. It might be that you're looking for something that works in a social space or a charity space. It might be you're looking for a company that uses cutting edge technology or the latest iOS versions, for instance. So write down the things that are really important to you and the things that you want to work on, and start looking for jobs that fit those descriptions. And it's the same with the job descriptions as well. So it might be that you want to become a data engineer or a test engineer or a mobile developer or a backend developer. So have a think about the kind of roles that you want to do and the work that you want to do, and write those down, and then you can use those to match up to job descriptions when you're searching for roles and going through them. And this will allow you to find roles and jobs that really suit you and that will inspire you and make you enthusiastic, because you want to be in a job that you enjoy, because the worst thing in the world is being in a job you don't enjoy. So if you can find a role that really kind of ticks your boxes and really ignites your passion, then it's a lot more interesting day to day, and it's a lot easier to get up in the morning. And then the final point is persevere, especially in the current state of the economy. There's a lot of people out there looking for jobs. There are lots of jobs out there, so don't worry about that. But it will take time to find a job. It's very unlikely that you'll get the first job that you apply for. So don't be disheartened by that. Every job that you apply for is good practice and good experience, whether it's learning how to best write your resume, whether it's learning how to go through the interview process, best sell yourself in a covering letter. So ask for feedback, take the advice and apply it, and just stick to it, and don't worry about getting knocked back too much, because it happens to everyone. I've certainly been in a place where I've applied for jobs and I think I'm perfect for this role, I really enjoy the company, it's exactly what I want to do, and you apply for it and then you get a rejection letter straight away, and it can be disheartening, but just kind of persevere and stick with it, and you'll find a job that you really love. Okay, Jen, do you want to take the slides?
Sure. So another part of looking for employment, and I concur with everything that Tim said, particularly the perseverance, is starting with your cover letter and resume. Those are very important, especially the cover letter. And tech resumes and cover letters are a little different. So in the cover letter, I think it's very important to write a pitch about why you want the job and what you can bring to the table. And you really want to show your willingness to learn and be teachable in this cover letter, and also get their attention based on your enthusiasm. So tell them why you're enthusiastic about the position and why you think you're a good fit, and concise. And you can even add a little bit of flair and personality to that, because that is your first opportunity to get their attention. And with the cover letter, you can plan maybe 30 seconds to 2 minutes of them reading it. So read it out loud and make it a very solid pitch, because that is your very first impression. And the resume, a tech resume, is something that you can really personalize. So float your most relevant experience to the top, select categories that showcase your skill set and experience the strongest. We want to show consecutive track of employment and your most relevant experience towards the top. I would also very much recommend that you have other people in your network and around you proofread your resume and go over that with you. And also your cover letter, read it out loud. And with the cover letter, it's very important to get out any typos or grammar errors as well, because it's so easy to misspell a word right on the top of the cover letter and, oh, now I can't unsend it. So proofread that one really, really good. Another element to applying for jobs is to have a portfolio. And this can get into all sorts of subjects. We could talk about this all day because there is a limitless way to build portfolios. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong way, but the point of a portfolio is to put a sample of your skills. And I consider it almost like a scrapbook of documenting your accomplishments. And also any code you do on the side or any projects, side projects you do, volunteer projects for your community, clubs you might be a part of. These are all candidates for being in your portfolio. Some of the more common ways of building a portfolio, of course, would be to use GitHub. So create a very good GitHub portfolio, and this is for the developers specifically, and put a couple projects that you made your own on there, even if they're very simple. I recommend putting a nice README, learn markup. There's a lot of guides on the web to learn some markup, and you can illustrate a very good README about each of your projects, and you can talk about what you learned. And then you can include a link to your GitHub on your resume. And even if it's very simple code projects, if you're applying for a junior developer position, it gives you a chance, just like the cover letter, to express your enthusiasm for code, why you made certain decisions in your design, what you learned from doing it, what was fun. And if you code in your spare time or for your community, be sure and document that, because I can think in the past of so many times that I've been using my skills for my community or little jobs. And if you don't document it, then you can't use it as part of your resume. So think of it like a scrapbook or like, your social media profile. And as you're out in the world doing things, everything you're doing where you're learning or contributing, you can find a way to put that on your portfolio. So another common thing to use for a portfolio would be like a personal blog. And if you don't want to set up your own domain and WordPress, I know I have one, but I hardly ever have time to update it. LinkedIn will let you post posts just like social media. You could use something like medium.com. Very affordable. So you can set up a blog a variety of ways, a free tool like Blogger, or you can do videos if you like to record little videos and use something like YouTube or TikTok. And there's no wrong way to build a portfolio, but what you want is a convenient link that'll show them that these are the things that I'm doing that are building my skills. And as far this can be used as you cultivate your network, because this can also, as you're building your network, you want to cultivate it. A network is a lot like a garden. So you first meet people and plant some seeds, and then you want to periodically follow up on those leads and cultivate them. So anyone relevant in your network to things you're doing now, check up with them. Look for people in your network that you can answer questions for them and maybe do favors, because what goes around comes around. So if you're struggling, I would say helping others can take your mind off your struggle and also build your network. And it's something you're going to cultivate over time. So as you're meeting people and as you're out and about in the world and doing activities, remember those people. I even set reminders that in 2 weeks, I need to follow up with this person that I just met, because otherwise it's so easy to forget these experiences that we're having out in the world and not follow up with people. And then you lose opportunities and lose track of them. So I recommend setting reminders, keeping some sort of a list of who's in your network that's relevant to what you're doing right now, who's in your network that you are possibly worried about or could help, who's in your network that is doing some of the stuff that you would like to be doing, and reach out to those people on a regular basis. The hardest part is reaching out. So if you are the one who initiates the contact, you will be connecting others with others, and networks need that. So be the person who reaches out. And a lot of us avoid that, but that is a very strong key to success with networking. And that being said, is there anything you would have to add, Tim? Or are we ready for the next slide?
I think we're ready to move on. I think I like all of them are excellent points. I think the network, your personal network, especially as you kind of get more and more experience, is the most important tool you have for job hunting and kind of moving up and across the career ladder. And certainly as you kind of get to the more senior level and principal level, almost everything is done via networking, I'd say, these days, whether it's posting for friends saying, have you heard about anything, or putting stuff on Twitter if you kind of have built a following, or just meeting people at conferences and stuff. So yeah, definitely go for and build your network and take the plunge, and don't be worried about it, because everyone's in the same position when they first start trying to build their network and meet people. Cool. Okay, awesome. So what's up time? So we're going to jump into some questions now. And we have a lot of questions on the chat, which is great. Thank you, Manda. Perfect. So they're on screen. So yeah, the first question is advice about working with applicant tracking systems and automatic screeners and stuff like that. My advice for this one, and it applies to a lot of kind of similar situations as well, is that and kind of any job, in fact, is when you're writing a covering letter or a resume, or even when you're filling in those really annoying online application forms where you have to provide answers in a box for different things and copy and paste it over and over again, is that you really need to make an effort to tailor your resume to that specific role. So if you're applying for a mobile role, mobile developer role, for an Android job that's looking for certain key responsibilities and skills, is that you need to make sure that you mention those skills in your resume. So an automatic screener or ATS systems are going to be looking through your answers that you submit to see, does it contain the keyword source control management, or does it contain the keyword Jetpack Compose, and those kind of things, and make sure you write your resume to kind of fit the role that you're applying for. So what I tend to do is when I'm applying for roles, is I will go through the job posting and go through line by line of saying, it's looking for this. Do I have anything that matches that? And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But if you do, make sure you tailor your experience or your skills to pick out those keywords that they will be looking for. And that's kind of the best piece of advice I can give to get through those annoying automatic systems that are very impersonal. Jen, anything to add?
Oh, I had a follow-up question, Jim, if that, to Tim, sorry. If let's say maybe some people could find it really overwhelming and daunting to have to revise their resume every single time. So would you recommend, or Jen, and maybe you could speak to this, having a suite of resumes for this family of jobs? I have this resume, I have this resume. And do you think that's enough to get by these sort of auto systems, or kind of the breadth of jobs that there are?
I think that's a great idea. What I do is I create a general resume, and then based on that, I will use that as the template for every more specific resume, so that I'm not starting completely from the beginning. And then what I'll do is just mostly edit for keywords. And I'll think, maybe if this is a more web job, I'll put some of my more web experience towards the top. If it's a more mobile app job, I might put, so it's kind of a quick cut and paste, so I don't have to spend all day. And then I keep them each in a separate folder. So I keep the materials for each job separate, so I can refer back to it in case they lose it and you need another copy. It's always good to keep a hard copy, or not a hard copy, but a backup copy. And I would say sometimes you can get through to the HR department, sometimes not. Where I work, I recommend people call the HR and make sure that it's processed, because our system kicks out a lot of people that we would like to interview. And so I make sure that applicants are very much aware that please contact HR and make sure that your application processed, because it could be as simple as a checkbox and we really want to interview you. And if it doesn't make it through the filter, then we can't. So some companies will be open to that, some won't, but you can always make a phone call. It never hurts to ask.
Could you model what that conversation might look like a little bit? It might seem kind of intimidating to call an HR and say like, hey, are you considering me for the job or not, right? So could you model like what's the entry point to that conversation? What does that look like?
Oh, sure. And I actually did this for the professor job I have now, because applying to colleges, you have to write a diversity statement, and there's about 8 pages on their application. It took me 2 days. So I just called in after I had done it. And one thing to note is check and make sure, is HR the people hiring you, or is it a separate HR? Where this company, the HR is separate. So I know the people dealing with me are not the people who will be interviewing me. That takes some of the pressure off, because these people are never going to see me again. They're not going to tell the hiring committee that I messed up a form. So I go ahead and I would call them up and say, hi, I am applying for a position through your platform, and I just wanted to check and see if it is processing correctly and if I included all the necessary elements. And they were receptive to that, maybe a little bit annoyed that they have to take time to go look it up. But I found some HR departments are open to that, very friendly. And if they're not, they can just tell you the rules, because that's what HR is there for. So they can say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't help it. We can't answer that sort of questions. And then you just, okay, well, thanks anyway. It's worth a try.
Perfect. I think we're ready for another question. Let's see here. So this is for both of you. Should you apply for a job even when you don't meet most of the requirements? So let's start with Tim, and Jen, I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, most job specs are not very well written. I'll put it that way. And they tend to, especially if they're written by recruiters who aren't particularly technical, they'll pick a lot of skills that are either not applicable or just completely unrealistic. And you see a lot of this stuff where online and kind of LinkedIn, where you have a job posting for a junior developer that's requiring 20 years of experience on Swift and Apple's new Reality OS, etc., and they're just like unattainable. So if the job looks interesting to you and you feel like it would be good for you, apply, because the worst that can happen is they say no, and that's it. Like it doesn't really matter too much. So yeah, if you like the look of the job and you think you should go for it, then go for it, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it'll be a good experience. And if they find someone else, then they find someone else. And I will let you into a little secret, is that every single job that I've ever been in, no one there has been fully qualified. It's tech. Everyone learns on the job. The industry changes so quickly and so much that even experienced senior people won't have done iOS when iOS first came out, or won't have done macOS when macOS first comes out, or whatever the next new technology is. So everyone needs to learn on the job, and no one's going to be hitting every requirement. So yeah, don't worry about it.
And I mean, even for the book that the both of you have made, the Hack Your Job Search, you both did research to write the book, and you're literally the people who wrote the book on it, right? So I think we forget how much we have to learn in order to just like do our lives and do our jobs. So it's really helpful advice. Jen, did you have anything follow? If you applied for a job you weren't fully qualified for, would you recommend other people do it?
I 100% agree with Tim. The one word that stands out is most of the requirements. So like for me, myself, I don't have a lot of like network security. So I'm not sure that I would apply for every job. There are some job descriptions in certain areas that I wouldn't throw a resume at. But as far as entry-level positions go, I would say apply for all of them. And also use your imagination to see like, what would it be like working at that company? What are they really looking for in that role? If that's a role that you think you can fill, then definitely throw a resume at it. I've seen companies change a job description because they like a candidate.
I would agree. We have a question here in the queue, specifically about what is it like to work for the organization. So we have Jess has asked, what's a good way to ask about work-life balance without seeming like you're lazy or don't want to work? Or, and this could also be, you could expand this a little bit. How do you find out more about the work culture in an elegant way when you're in the interview?
Jen, do you want to go or should I go? I don't mind.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So this is a topic that's very important to me because I was a non-traditional student. I'm a woman in tech. I'm a single mother. I have various things going on in my life, and I've learned that I need work-life balance. So I would say step one is to own your worth and come from a place of confidence that everybody has a life outside of work. And if they don't, that is a toxic company. So if you can't even ask that question, then you're probably better off if they pass you over. I would just ask nice and say, because a lot of people value this in tech. So just ask them, what is the culture like at this company? And, you could ask them things, do we work outside of our scheduled hours? Are we ever on call? Those sorts of questions are legitimate. And so I would be very careful about the wording to make sure it doesn't sound like an attack, or that it doesn't, or an accusation, or that it doesn't sound like you're asking permission. So sometimes as a professor, I had to learn to own my power. And sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And, you just have to own it and say, I have these things going on in my life, and this is where I draw the boundaries. That's going to work for you.
Tim, anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, no, I think there's nothing wrong with asking your interviewers if, do you tend to work late most days or some days? And it's generally quite easy to spot if they're lying. And if they're lying, then that's probably not the right company. I'd say wouldn't go for a company like that. And there's also sites like Glassdoor and other kind of job review sites where you can look up that company and that culture and see, what do the people working there think about it, and is it being truthful? So definitely check out those. And yeah, if like most companies that do on-call stuff, because you will find roles that have people who are on call, because that's the nature of tech, because it has to be up 24/7. And in the job spec or in the interview, you can ask about what is on-call being like. Do you get compensated? Because you should be compensated if you're working out of hours. Do you get the time back in lieu if you're called in at 3 o'clock in the morning, or whenever it is? So check with those and ask about flexibility and stuff. And good companies will give you honest answers and be upfront about it, and toxic companies will not. So that'd be my advice.
We actually had a question here about identifying toxic work culture. Someone asked in the interview process, right? So how can we identify toxic culture from a couple of interviews? And you've gestured toward do your research, right? There's resources like Glassdoor, and maybe the way they answer some certain questions, but are there any other kinds of things that we can ask or look for in the interview process to help identify some of those qualities?
I think generally just the way they treat you throughout the process. Do they respond to emails? Do they give you feedback if you ask for it? Are they respectful in the interview? Because a lot of people kind of first getting into tech don't have a lot of experience, and that's absolutely fine. But you might find that some companies are kind of disparaging of that, and if they're disparaging of that, then that kind of reflects on their culture as a whole. And the other thing is kind of ask around. Certainly in the UK and in Manchester, the tech scene is very incestuous. It's a big merry-go-round of people working for the same companies and going round and round. So if someone has a bad company or a bad boss or a bad team, ask your friends or your network or your kind of people and chances are you'll be able to find out quite easily.
Perfect. Jen, anything to add to like investigating the work culture, specifically if it's things like it'll be a good place to work?
I would use your gut feelings. I agree with everything Tim said, and check them out on the web and look for people in a similar demographic or similar role or personality to you, and see if you can ask them. So if you can find anyone on LinkedIn that works for that company, why not shoot them a little chat that says, hey, I'm thinking of working for that company. How do you like it? It never hurts.
I love the idea of using networking we think about networking looking for opportunities, but what we're talking about here is like researching your opportunities, leaning on your community. I think probably even just shooting a message into your Slack community or Discord community and just say, does anyone work here? Probably the answer would be yes, to Tim's point, right? It's not that big of a community, even though it's quite global. We have a lot of other really great questions. If you're a little more technical, we have kind of a longer one here, Stephanie. I wonder if that would, Stephanie's supporting in the back. If this, let's put one up, a choose your own adventure. Great. So any advice on filtering efficiently which job postings that are actively hiring versus postings that aren't serious for bringing someone in for another 6 to 12 months, but building up their application pool? Really specific question, but if you had any tips, I think that would be helpful.
Again, I would say ask around and just speak to the company directly, or the recruiters or the HR department, and just be like, is this role open? When are you looking for people to start? Because that's a great question, because it might be that you have a notice period of 3 months and they're looking for someone to start in 2 weeks, in which case you might struggle with that one. Or it might be, oh, we're looking for someone to start in 6 months. And if you're looking for a job right now, then maybe look at something else.
Maybe we're still researching the job board itself. For example, Women Who Code, obviously shameless plug, but like I know all of our postings are active, right? If the people are hiring, the job is there, and if they're not, the job isn't up, right? So probably the quality of like the board, if you're using a board, could be really helpful as well. We have another question about finding jobs. So do you have any tips on finding job postings that have a low number of applicants? On the flip side, do job postings with low applicants mean the job isn't so great?
I think you can tell a little bit from the description. Of course, like smaller companies, lower pay, those sorts of things are going to have lower numbers of applicants. And I actually really like working for small companies. I lived in a small town where the living expenses were lower. I went after these job descriptions for small companies with salaries that were proportional to where I lived. So I would say also which company it is too. So if it's Google, they're going to have a lot of applicants. If it's XYZ, Ma and Pa, 5-person collections agency company, then they're going to have a lot fewer.
Okay. Do you think that people should apply to like a breadth of jobs in that case? So like if you just really have a dream of working for like a big name in tech, right? Apple or Google, but do you think people should expand their job search to include all kinds of roles, all kinds of size jobs? And if so, why would you recommend that?
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone has their kind of dream job, and for the most part, a lot of people don't get it until they're like third or fourth try. So it might be that you want to work for Apple, for instance, but the jobs available at Apple are looking for people with either a bit more experience than you or kind of different skills, in which case you can hold off, and there's nothing wrong with applying for different jobs in different companies, either getting the experience either on the job or in interviews, and then when you've got a really strong application, applying again to kind of get the role that you really want. But yeah, you might find, I'd say that a lot of kind of dream roles are generally, they're not any better than any other company. There are really fantastic smaller companies out there and different companies out there who will give you just as much fun working for them as the big names.
We did have a question here from Joan, who's asking specifically for finding jobs after a career break. So any tips on job searching after a career break specifically?
I would say this is really common, especially for many of my lady friends out there who've been a mom or some people, anyone who's gone back for more education. So I see this all the time with people who've come back to college for retraining, to do a career change, or people who've taken time off for their family life. I think a portfolio and some can be very, very helpful here, because you can use your past experience. And then also addressing why there was a gap. So I'm sure there was a good reason, so you can address why there was a gap and what you're wanting to do now. And then if you can, demonstrate that you're proactively training yourself in these skills. So I would use your portfolio to do that. And I knew there's someone who works for our Codeco company who had a 10-year skill gap. And she came back and she did just some online courses for Android, and she made a presence. She joined the Google developer community. She got hired as a senior Android developer. It was her first job in 10 years. And she put about maybe a year and a half worth of effort to learning the Android platform and networking. And it was amazing. So I know I see this happen every day. But I think that's the best way to bridge the gap is I'm bringing myself up to the current skill level with this endeavor. And this is why I was not in the workplace.
So thinking about then, let's say you're coming back from either a gap or maybe you're new to your career journey. Either way, you've got some time where you don't have a lot of experience built. What do you put on your resume? What do you put in your portfolio? What do you populate that with to show people I can do this job?
Go for it, Jen.
Yeah, for me, I have this situation with, of course, I teach community college students, and I had this situation. For me, I had done some work, and this will date how old I am, but I had been a dictation typer for State Farm Insurance through a temp agency. That actually counts as technical work. I had, through that same temp agency, been a typesetter for a graphic artist magazine, but it's just because I type fast. I had worked in the computer lab at my college. I had run some of the PowerPoints for a local community club and done some tech support for them. So you can take these little things that you've done, even just hooking up your family's Wi-Fi for them, and you can use that on your resume and make it sound professional. And so you'd be surprised. So I would say, what have you done and how is it technical? Because even when I was working fast food, I was dealing with the register. I was the one who had to fix the printer because I had tech skills. So I could even say, hey, when I worked for XYZ hamburger shop, I was the one they called when the printer broke.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think there's a couple of points I'll add, which is, number one, if you're applying for a junior role, you're applying for a junior role. You're not applying for a senior role. So most companies are not expecting you to have lots of experience in tech. So A, don't worry about it. And B, if you're kind of doing a career change, or even if you're not and you worked in a restaurant when you were at college or worked in retail, a lot of those soft skills are transferable. And there's a big misconception in tech that you get your tech job, you sit at your computer, you turn the lights out, you shut the curtains, you put your hoodie up, and you just code for 10 hours a day. That's it. And it's really not the case. It's a very interactive, personable job where you need to talk to clients and customers and different stakeholders and business managers and graphic designers and everyone. You need to be able to explain problems in a good way. You need to be able to deal with difficult customers. And if you've kind of got past roles in any industry, whether it's retail or the services sector or whatever, you can take examples from there of how you've worked with different customers, how you've managed a team, how you've kind of organized people, and use that to showcase your soft skills that are just as important as technical skills when it comes to applying for roles.
I love this. Jen's question, asking yourself, what have I done and how was it technical? And saying, what other skills can I bring to the role?
Sorry.
I think is really, really valuable advice. We had a couple of questions about career changing, and I think asking yourself these two questions, what other skills do I bring and what technical skills have I done, can be really valuable here. We did have a question about becoming a junior developer here. Someone is asking, gosh, I saw it and now I can't find the exact phrasing, but it was a lot of the job postings say that junior devs need to have 2+ years experience, and they're curious to know, thank you. We have a magician on hand here who can just summon questions. So how serious is this 2+ years? Can you still apply even if you're not at that two year mark?
Yeah, if it's a junior role, 2 years is unrealistic. I'd expect 0 years, or maybe some kind of boot camp or college certificate or something, or even just self-taught for 6 months is fine.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of times 2 years experience can also be substituted with a degree. So if you have a 4-year computer science degree, that will usually get rid of the 2 years experience, and they may not get 2 years experience for a junior role. So that would be something to apply for anyway. And you could count any of your side work or hobby coding as part of your experience. So say, hey, I built a to-do list doing this online course I found. That's experience if you put it on GitHub.
There's a question here about GitHub, actually. How much does username quality, this is from Heather, how much does username and quality of the content on a GitHub account matter?
Username, absolutely nothing. I've had a stupid username for all my career, and if a company is rejecting me because of my username, then it's a company I don't want to work for, frankly. So it's a good way of doing like your own filtering of companies. I think in terms of content on GitHub, if someone's got content on GitHub that I can refer to when interviewing them to go through, that is fantastic. It's than having nothing. I don't care if it's not fully documented and fully tested or whatever. It's a really, really good way of showcasing problems you've worked on and problems you've solved. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect code. We can go through it and talk about it and go, so tell me, why did you choose this kind of way of doing it? And you can talk about the technical aspects there. And that is one of the best ways of interviewing people. It's far better than any kind of algorithm questions or whiteboard interviews or any kind of that stuff. Being able to talk through someone with a problem they've actually worked on and something they've actually built is the best way of interviewing someone and finding out about their enthusiasm and willingness to learn and kind of experience than anything else.
We have a few minutes left, which in conference time could be a lot or a little, so we'll see. I did want to address the question here someone asked. So we've got Audrey. She's asked they've asked, excuse me, what to do if you're applying and only receiving rejection letters. What would be the next best steps? Would you advise?
Jen,
that's that persistent thing. So yeah, to troubleshoot your process and don't be discouraged. So first off, don't take it personally. Don't be discouraged. It is good to question, is this a matter with my resume? Is this a matter of my cover skills? So you want to iterate back through the process, checking everything along the way. So if you're getting nothing but rejection letters, maybe get some feedback. So I would say number one is look at how am I writing my cover letters? How am I writing my resumes? Can I have some different individuals go over these and give me suggestions for improvement? Because it's like writing a book or anything else. You can endlessly hone your approach and proofread. And so I would iteratively go over everything and say what is working and what's not working, and then try and determine why. So if you're getting rejected, every chance you can get feedback of like, why did I not get hired for this role, and what could I do differently next time? So if you, sometimes the letter will say, sometimes you can't talk to the people, so that's not realistic. But if you can talk to the people, you can say, what could I do to do better, next time? And probably many people have heard that question, and that might actually leave a good impression if you try again next time of like, I would say don't give up too. If it's a company you really want to work for, Tim had mentioned like with Google, many people will interview multiple times. It can take years to get on there. So don't give up. If it's a company you really want to work for, try and ask them how to do better. Try to leave it amicable and then reapply, and they'll see your face and they'll see you keep trying. And sometimes moxie gets rewarded.
In the last minute, Tim, one final piece of advice for if you had to fill in the blank, like in my opinion, successful candidates do what? What can people really take away from this talk?
Ooh. Hard question, right, to end on that. I like the biggest. So when I'm employing people or hiring people, the biggest thing I'm looking for is willingness to learn. I don't care about experience. I don't care about official qualifications or whether it's on a boot camp or a degree or whether self-taught. It doesn't matter. if they can demonstrate that they are keen and interested to learn and can learn well, that's the biggest thing that I look for when employing people. So if you can showcase the fact that you've worked on different things and tried different things and learned technologies, and you read tech blogs or whatever it is to kind of demonstrate those kind of skills, then that would put you in that'll put you above most of the people applying for jobs already, I'd say.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for your time. I think that this has been really informational, and people can reach out to you on LinkedIn. Is that right? If they have more questions?
Yep, go for it.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much.